Hello everybody, I'm Miss Lisa. Welcome back to another episode of Woke Art for Teens and Adults. Today I'm going to be telling you about a piece of art that I call Broken Ties. This art is inspired by the book Everything You Wanted to Know About Indians But Were Afraid to Ask by Anton Treuer, and we are discussing Native American voices in this episode. So who is Dr. Treuer? He's a professor of Ojibwe at Bemidji State University in Minnesota. He's a member of the Ojibwe tribe of Native Americans. The Ojibwe people are also referred to as the Chippewa. You might have heard of the Chippewa as well. His main focus in writing this book was to educate the general population who really don't know about Indians. He says Indians are often imagined instead of understood, and this leads to a lot of bad feelings. Dr. Treuer's areas of expertise include cultural competence and equality, addressing the achievement gap, tribal sovereignty and history, and revitalizing Ojibwe language and culture. The Ojibwe are one of the largest tribes in North America. About 1/3 of the Ojibwe live in the northern U.S., especially around the area of the Great Lakes, and about 2/3 of them live in southern Canada, in the same area, that sort of area around the Great Lakes. There are nearly 150 bands of Ojibwe in the U.S. and Canada, and each lives on its own reservation. These lands are under their control. That means each is politically independent and has its own government, laws, police, and services. As Dr. Treuer says, Indians are often imagined instead of being understood, and this breeds anger. Indians are in pain. They're suffering from chronic unemployment, from poverty, from substance abuse, from lack of economic and political power. It would be bad enough if the situation was due to bad circumstances, but lots of the problems can be traced back to government actions designed to disempower and take culture away from the Indians. One of these ways was the establishment of residential assimilation boarding schools. Approximately 150 such schools opened in the U.S., and children, tens of thousands, were forced to leave their families at a young age. They had to give up their language and their names, their clothing and their hair. They had to have their hair cut. They were banned from practicing their religion and culture, and they were given Anglo names. They often were used for child labor. They did a lot of manual labor around the school, and they were underfed. These schools caused tremendous psychological as well as physical damage to the children and their families. The trauma was devastating. When children finally returned home, they could not speak their native language, nor could they relate to much of their native culture. And that's why this piece is called Broken Ties. It's a watercolor, and in this piece of art, I have woven 3 sorts of art forms that I associate with the Ojibwe people. We have the jingle dress. I'll explain this in a minute, but these are jingles from the jingle dress. And this here is the embroidery, beaded embroidery. The Ojibwe are known for their beaded embroidery, especially of floral motifs. And the dream catcher. You may have seen dream catchers before. So let's talk about the beading firstly. Ojibwe artists are known for their beautiful bead embroidery, particularly a floral design, okay, just like I had mentioned before. But look how this piece here is coming undone, and the beads have fallen off the string at this point and are just kind of not tied to anything else. The jingle dress. The jingle dress was made by taking these snuff can lids and tobacco can lids and rolling them into a cone shape. And then a piece of ribbon was knotted and threaded through the hole at the end of the cone. And these were then sewed onto a piece of ribbon and sewn onto a dress in rows. So when the dancer danced, the jingles swished back and forth and made a lovely, peaceful sort of rain falling sound. And the jingle dress became, and the dance became very popular. And the dance is also known as a healing dance because there's stories behind the making of the first jingle dress. And it came to a man in a dream. There are different versions of this story, but basically it was either his granddaughter or his own daughter or another girl in the tribe, but she was very sick, and in the dream he was shown how to make the jingle dress and how to do the dance and what kind of music was incorporated into this, and he was told that the girl would get better. And this happened, and so this became part of the jingle dress story. The dress itself and the dance have become very popular. You'll see it performed at powwows. It's been adopted by other Indian tribes as well. And this started out as an Ojibwe custom, a ritual dance, which was banned, by the way. Soon after it was performed, it was banned because it was deemed too cultural. And the Indian nations picked it up anyways and kept it going. So I just wanted to show you a picture here. Here's a jingle skirt. Well, this is the lower part of the dress here. And all of the cones are sewn on in rows. And you can imagine the sound that they make as the dancer moves to and fro. This picture also shows some of the beautiful floral beading down here on the moccasins and the leg coverings. Now, the third thing I wanted to talk about was the dream catcher. The dream catcher, as you know, are sort of a symbol now, a pan-Indian symbol, a pan-Native American symbol, but started out as an Ojibwe thing, an Ojibwe tradition, an Ojibwe way of protecting a child. So they were made originally with a piece of willow that was tied into a circle, and then sinews were usually used they were split and then used to make a web. And the story was that good dreams and bad dreams would be around the person as they sleep, but usually the bad dreams will be caught by the dream catcher and the good dreams go through. Sometimes it's said the other way around. The good dreams are caught by the dream catcher and they go down the feather. Sometimes they have feathers at the end and they will go down and stay with the person below. So the dream catcher was something that Ojibwe women made for children, and they still do. And that's sort of where that all came from. So the dream catcher is a handmade willow hoop on which a net or web was woven. It was traditionally hung over a cradle as protection or on the hoop of a cradle board. So after I made this piece of artwork, you can see that here's a ribbon and the jingles are on the ribbon and then they are coming off the ribbon. The beads are on the embroidery and then they're coming off the embroidery. The dream catcher is coming undone. So to me, this was broken ties. This was Indian culture coming apart, especially due to some of these actions like the boarding schools. Terrible, terrible trauma for both the families and the children. Can you imagine not being able to feel anything about your history or your culture? That was just gone for them. But the interesting thing after I made this piece was that you could look at it in another way. Things were coming apart, or the apart was coming together. And so this piece turned out to be one that you could read two different ways, and I didn't realize it until I'd finished it. And I think that's totally appropriate, because now, with efforts like Dr. Treuer's, the culture is coming back together again. And Ojibwe, there's actually, in Bemidji, the shops and the government in Bemidji, the city government, has taken to using bilingual signage, Ojibwe and English signage in the town and in the surrounding areas. So that's cool. So how do we do this piece of artwork? You will need some watercolor paints. You will need a pencil. You will need a couple of yogurt lids or something similar, because we're going to draw a couple circles. You will need some kind of I like using an ink pen to outline a lot of my elements, a lot of the things that are in my artwork here. And the pen itself is water soluble. It's a Flair Papermate. It's a Papermate Flair pen. And the ink sort of, when you get it wet, will flow into any wet paint that is next to it. I like that sort of flow. It's not, if that bothers you, then use a permanent marker and it will not flow. But what we're going to do now, and you'll need watercolor paints, of course. So I've got watercolor paints, I've got a brush, I've got water, paper towels, a piece of paper, a larger yogurt lid, and a smaller pot lid. I've got my water-soluble marker and some pencils. So as you can see, the dream catcher was made by tracing around this yogurt pot lid, and the flower was made by tracing around that one. So we're basically going to start like this. And yours does not have to look like mine, but this is how I did this. So close by, I'm going to make that circle. And then I'm going to make this one darker. I'm going to make another circle inside there. And then with this circle, I'm going to divide it into 6 pieces very lightly. And put a circle in there very lightly. That's the center of my flower. And then along these lines, I can darken those halfway. And then we're just going to draw a curve that goes up and around. Okay, I'm just looking at this line now. We're going to do a spiral, and it's going to continue down here and just make it very loose down here. It's just a piece of string that's come undone. So we start out with a spiral, and at the other side of the flower it comes out, crosses over the dream catcher, and then just kind of comes undone. And then all along this, we're going to change this into beads. And I'm going to do that with my dark pen in just a minute. And then down here, there's just some individual beads. And then we'll make another spiral up here. And those are all going to change into beads. So I'm going to change them into beads right now. Of course, the petals of this flower would all be beaded as well, but that will take too long for this class, so I will not do that. I'll just paint it as one continuous color. Here's the center. If any of this is going too fast, remember you can always stop the video and catch up. Now here I'm going to space some of these beads out a little bit because this one's coming undone. And then there's just some beads. Let's go ahead and make some leaves. Of course, these would all be beaded as well. It would be strands and strands of little beads, but we're just going to paint them as a continuous color. If you want to fill it all in with small circles, go ahead. That would be really cool. It will look really nice. Okay, there's some leaves. And now we're going to skip over to the ribbon with the jingles on it. So I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to do a curved line that's going to cross over my beads. And I want it to look like it's far away at the beginning and it's getting closer to us. So it's going to be wider where it's closest to us and very narrow where it is far away from us. And then I'm going to draw the jingles in the distance as just tiny little triangles. Some of them might be swooshing upwards, some of them hanging downwards. And they're actually on tiny little ribbons. And as they get closer to us, we're going to make them a little bit bigger. The perspective would say that we need them to be slightly bigger as they get closer to us. And they're also going to be spaced a little further away. And that will give the illusion that they're far away and getting closer. Now the other thing that's going to happen with these jingles as they come closer is the ones at the very front the ones closest to us, are going to be falling off. So about here, I'll make one more. But maybe this one has come detached. And I think another one here too. Maybe this one here. Now remember, these are rolled metal lids. So I think if we just, and they're round, so if we just give a little curved line on there, it kind of looks like the lid has been rolled together. And so let's go ahead and add that. And I'll put some more detail with the pen in just a minute. Let's go on to the webbing in our dream catcher. So we're just going to make some evenly spaced marks along this willow hoop, along the willow hoop. And we're going to take our sinew, and what happens is you wrap it as you go around. You wrap it. So we'll just draw it like this. And because this is might also be covered in a strip of leather, you can actually pull the sinew in between the leather, and it doesn't show, but it has the effect of looking like this when you're done. And then the next layer, this is now where the knot is going to be. So you're going to come up here, knot, knot, knot. Sometimes there's beads woven into it, sometimes feathers, sometimes other important items, maybe a little animal. I mean, not a real animal, a little animal bead. And then we're going to lose some of these strings. So on this layer, I'm going to go like this, but maybe I'm going to lose a little bit of this. And maybe here, maybe this part is undone too. So our dream catcher is coming apart. But at this point, we'll have a little bit more of it together. So that's basically the design. And now I'm just going to go over it with my black felt pen. I turn my paper a lot as I draw because I find that it's just easier to draw lines going one way than another. I don't know why that is. So these little jingles are very small because they're in the distance. As they get closer to us, we might be able to see the opening at the bottom. So I'll indicate that with a little oval shape. This one's coming off. This one has also come off. This one has come off. And I'm just going to continue now the string here that has a few beads, but most of the other beads have fallen off the string. And I'm going to go over my dream catcher. I'm also going to tie a feather to it. And this is the part where it's coming undone. And let's go ahead and attach a feather. Put a bead up there. Okay, I'm going to go to my paintbrush now. I'm going to start with a little bit of brown. I'm doing my jingles gold. They're usually gold or silver. And then I put them on a purple ribbon. And at this point, I can also do the flower. I'm not going to get too close to my center of the flower because it's still wet. And I know if I get my wet purple next to that, it will all mix together like I just did there. That's all right. It'll add an interesting element. It won't look so much like purple beads now, but that's all right. I was going to try to keep my purple away from the yellow, but that's what happens when it gets too close. Now I'm going to move over to the green. I'll put some leaves. I'll paint the leaves. So these will be green beads. We can imagine that although it looks like a solid green, that they're made up of tiny little rows of green beads. And likewise, the purple petals are actually made up of tiny little rows of purple beads. I'm going to my blue now. I'm going to put blue in these dots. So these will be blue beads. This brush has a pointed tip, so it's not the best brush for making little round dots. And the last thing I want to do is just put a little bit of shadow inside these cones. So you can see they're three-dimensional. That kind of makes them look more three-dimensional, doesn't it? Now we have a piece of artwork that incorporates the Ojibwe dreamcatcher, the jingles from the jingle dress, and the floral beadwork. I hope you enjoyed this class. I hope you learned a lot. I learned a lot preparing this class for you. Please take care when you go outside. Wear a mask. Wash your hands well when you come inside. And keep reading and keep doing art. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.